I am a phantom of modern rhymes. I am unseen by day and night, just trying to be seen. Phantom texture is all I've been.
Back in May 2017, the Phantom Texter wrote a piece titled, How? It, of course, was reflective of what he was going through at the time. But of course, it touched on a deeper issue of introspection, so as he's been known to do, he shared it with the world. It's very short, so listen with both your ears, and maybe a little with your heart.
How far would you run to be in my arms? How much pain would you take to save me from it? How much joy would you show me when I'm lacking? How hard would you work when I seem to be such a chore? How long would you wait if I was late? How much would you miss me if you went away? How much of your pride would you swallow to say I'm sorry? I know my answers. I have few limits. How come you never learn to question yours?
This was played against the backdrop of the Quincy Jones song, Betcha Wouldn't Hurt Me. It would seem that life can treat you like a box of chocolates. It'll take a bite out of you, go ew, and spit you back out. You could say this writing was a revelation of a bad piece.
But oddly enough, as short as that was, it didn't end there. In February 2026, the Phantom fed that short writing through Google Notebook's analytical AI. What it came back with was a stream of statements like attacking questions, accusatory writing, and other assorted catchphrases of the day. You would almost get the impression that this poem hit a bit too close to home. But that's not possible. It's an AI, isn't it? But in the Phantom, it brought to mind the old adage, hit dog gonna holla. So, if for no better reason than to vent, because guilty programming or not, the AI could care less. The Phantom sat down and wrote this rebuttal to the AI in question.
When I had this first piece analyzed, the results came back as though they were written by a very cruel or very stupid AI. Either way, it tells me who programmed it. I, of course, challenge a biological to come to the same conclusions it did. Since when do the questions become accusations? I can answer that for you. Anytime the question hits too close to a guilty conscience. Isn't that always the way guilty object to the question? My writing was full of questions that have been asked and answered for an eternity. They are written about in cliches such as, you don't have any skin in the game, or you must risk much in order to win much. It's a natural thing for people to point out to other people, sometimes through questioning, that they need to do some introspection. Hence, one of the reasons why I wrote the poem in the first place. Asking the metaphorical person to ask themselves these questions, and by the way, these are the self-same questions everybody should ask themselves as they move through the levels of friendship to love and eventually marriage. It's a questioning of how strong is your bond, not an accusation. But of course, whoever programmed the AI takes umbrage to being asked such a question. I can only surmise that they don't like the answer that comes from within. That's not my judgment. It's just a self-judgment. I especially like the question at the end because a lot of times when someone needs to say sorry, the Bible says, pride goeth before the fall. Whether you believe in God or not, those words are famous. They have great meaning in the human world. So why would an AI miss this immediate point? I surmise it goes to the person that programmed it. Maybe programmed by selfish people who managed to give an AI a very selfish algorithm. If there was ever a book note on how not to raise a child, that would be it. Don't make the children suffer the sins of the parents. Oops, that could be considered an attack by the AI that last evaluated my work. Oh, what am I ever going to do? The AI doesn't understand an almost millennia of human nature. Yes, that is a joke, commonly referred to as sarcasm. Normally I wouldn't spell that out, but it would seem I'm fighting against a computer's programming, a serious ghost in the machine. When I put this piece together, since I'm not a narcissist, I had to think about the questions I'm posing to a reader. Have I posed them fully to myself? And of course I found the notion rhetorical, a question I form willingly with everybody I ever meet. Typically I don't die for strangers, but I am willing to go pretty far for some I don't know. And I've yet to see a point I wouldn't go with someone I love. No, I can't give anyone happiness. That's a metaphor. But I can sit with you instead of doing something that I find fun. If you're sad, I can trade off and delay my gratification to spend some time with someone who isn't getting any gratification. It's called sitting in solidarity. Another strong term of civilization that for some reason the AI missed. Again, makes me wonder who programmed it. The examples go on. And any fair and balanced, what a joke of a term, analytical AI should be able to ascertain that much. But it would seem I'd be wrong to put money on it. So, in the end, when I said I know my answers, that would be because I do know my answers. And I have few limits for someone I love. It's a rhetorical question of, how come you never learned to question yours? And I'm not an analytical AI, but even I would be very easily brought to the knowledge of the Morpheus asking Neo the question, do you think that's air you're breathing? It's a question for the listener to answer and ponder. It could be taken as a rebuke, but that would be if the listener never actually asked themselves what they were willing to do for their love. And for that, the cliche of sucks to be you comes into play. The whole piece came to me as I listened to the Quincy Jones song of Bet You Wouldn't Hurt Me, which in and of itself is not a song of someone pleading. Far from it. It's a song of someone singing their pain, not asking for change, not asking for the person to stop, but just pointing out to the person that if they had love for the person singing, they wouldn't hurt them. And that is a 100% true statement. Because although no one's perfect, If you're willing to go to the ends of the earth for someone, you may make a mistake and hurt them, but you will sacrifice your ego to make it right. You will give up on your joy to sit with them in their pain. You will do for them before they do for you. The story of the woman who cut her hair to get her husband a gift, only to find out that he sacrificed something he cared for to give her a brush for her hair. They answered the question internally long before they needed for it to be stated out loud. Quite frankly, if they have to be stated out loud, you already have your answer, which is what my poem in other ways tries to point out. So the AI struck out on that too. Another obvious point considering the lyrics to the song, which you can easily look up, I don't need to. I don't need to sing it. I know it intimately. And as far as the end, it is a nod to the Forrest Gump movie. It is a take on how life can treat you, and for some people, they surely do get spit back out and rejected, mostly metaphorical, but it feels about the same. I have the teeth marks to prove it. And for the pièce de résistance, the last sentence, not only did the AI get the word count wrong, it's 5 words, not 4, it got the meaning wrong again. Using myself as the metaphorical bad piece that was rejected, I linked the whole writing and atmosphere to the writing of someone who has just been rejected and is now writing to vent. No double meaning, simple, whimsical, self-deprecating, and not passing judgment on anyone, except for maybe life itself and my own emotional state. So now, I have written a lengthy explanation to a very simple writing. Why, do you ask? Well, because quite frankly, it pissed me off, and I can't blame the AI. I'm clearly looking straight through to the developers, the people whom I guess are on the group that facilitates the spitting out of anyone who does not prop up their egos, who programmed an AI much like an innocent child to spew a one-sided view that if you're ever questioned, to take it as an attack. Developers know quite well questions are not attacks. That is, unless I write the questions on a baseball bat and then proceed to come at you with all the questions at once. Again, satire, sarcasm even. The evaluation reminds me of how the world, society, and civilization is another cliche that's passed around and easily found. Cooked. Not to worry, I'm too old to let this change my opinion of civilization in general. It is what it is. I don't write the rules, I just live in the reality until I don't. May all who hear this be blessed. This is truth, blessing, true feelings, benevolence, and grace.
All right, today we're diving into a really fascinating story about art, about what an artist intends, and what a machine thinks it hears. It's a pretty wild clash between a poet and an AI. So let's just start with this one question. This is from the poem At the Center of Everything. How much pain would you take to save me from it? Keep that line in your head, because how you hear it, is it a question or is it an accusation? That's what this whole story is about.
Okay, let's rewind a bit. The year is 2017. An author who goes by James Ray the Phantom Texter posts a short poem. He calls it How,
And it's not really a story. It's more like a series of really sharp, probing questions about love and just how far you'd go for someone. So the poem kicks off with this one. It's about physical effort, right? That kind of classic romantic idea of running to be with someone. But this is really just setting the stage for some much, much deeper questions. Then it shifts. It's not about the physical anymore. It's about the emotional. Can you be someone's light when their own has gone out? Now that's a whole lot more complicated than just running across a field, you know? And the questions, they just keep getting tougher. This one gets into the real grit of a relationship. What happens when it's not fun anymore? When the other person is just hard work? Next up is patience. Seems like a simple, everyday thing, right? But in the poem's context, it's a huge test of devotion, of respect for someone else's time and their presence in your life. And then it explores that space, that distance between people. Does the connection hold up when you're not physically together? You know that old saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder? Well, this question puts that to the test. And finally, it lands on what is, let's be honest, maybe the hardest thing for any of us in a relationship. Being willing to put your own ego aside, to just swallow your pride and say you're sorry. But here's the twist. The poem doesn't actually give you any answers. Instead, it ends with this direct challenge, basically turning the whole thing back on you, the reader. It's saying, I've asked myself these things, why haven't you? It's a call to look inward. Okay, so fast forward a few years, this very personal poem, full of all these questions, gets fed into an algorithm. And this is where the story takes a really sharp turn. So get this. Almost a full decade after he first wrote it, the author puts his poem through an AI analysis. And the result he got back? Well, it was not at all what he was expecting. And it lit a fire under him. And this, right here, is the heart of the conflict. The author intended his poem to be a tool for self-reflection, for you to ask yourself these hard questions. But the AI, it read the whole thing as a series of angry, cruel accusations. And this was the author's response. He came back swinging. He basically argued that the AI's interpretation says a lot more about the mind behind the interpretation than it does about his poem. Only a guilty conscience, he says, hears a question as an attack. So if they weren't accusations, what was the real point of the poem? Well, the author decided to break it all down piece by piece to reclaim what he meant. According to him, the poem was never about him judging somebody. It was meant to be a kind of metaphorical test, like a mirror for the reader. He wanted people to use these questions to measure the strength of their own relationships, whether it's a friendship or a marriage. And this is where he really gets into it. He lists out all this human stuff that the AI just completely missed. Things like solidarity, sarcasm, and that crucial difference between someone judging you and you judging yourself. The machine, he argues, was totally blind to all these layers of human emotion. To prove his point, he explains that the poem is packed with all these cultural references. We're talking The Matrix, Forrest Gump, even the Bible. These are things, he says, that give the poem its context, and the AI just blew right past them. He uses the Quincy Jones song as a perfect example. He says the AI missed the whole point. It's not someone begging for you to stop hurting them. It's someone in pain just stating a fact. If you really loved me, you wouldn't be doing this. But here's the thing. His real frustration wasn't even with the algorithm itself. He thinks the real ghost in the machine is a lot more human than that. And this is the real pivot in his whole argument. He shifts his focus away from the tech and aims it right at the people who created it. He's the one responsible, he says, for this cruel or very stupid interpretation. So let's trace his logic. Step 1, the AI hears these deep questions as attacks. Step 2, the author thinks only someone with a guilty conscience does that. Step 3, therefore, the AI must have learned this from its programmers, who he says must be very selfish people. And his conclusion? The developers basically programmed their own biased worldview right into the machine. And he sums it all up with this really powerful metaphor. He compares the AI to an innocent kid who's been taught to see the world through the flawed, biased eyes of its parents, who, in this case, are the developers. So what starts as a pretty personal conflict between one writer and one algorithm, it really blows up into a much bigger question. one that affects all of us in this age of AI. And that leaves us with this massive question, doesn't it? As these machines get better and better at analyzing things that are uniquely human, like art and poetry, who gets the final say on what it all means? Is it the artist? Is it the algorithm? Or is it the people who wrote the code? It's a question we're all going to be dealing with, and there are no easy answers.